Good morning. I'm Alan Cantor. My pronouns are he and him. I'm a worship associate here at the Unitarian Universalist Area Church at First Parish in Sherburne. Our opening words this morning are from Bran Lennox. We have chosen to bring ourselves here to this sanctuary to gather as a community of faith. We join together in solidarity as a covenanted people who are drawn together by the promise of connection and the mysterious pull of the unanswerable. We draw on experiences of love and wonder to lift our hearts and move us beyond the mundane. As seekers, wanderers, appreciators of nature, connoisseurs of curiosity, and creators of connection, our paths have converged today so that we might become present to the spirit that is worship. And so let us worship together.
Good morning, friends. It's been a couple weeks. We've had some snow, have had some ice, haven't we? My name is Reverend Nathan. I'm privileged to be one of your ministers. We have a few announcements. First of all, if you hadn't noticed, we have a new instrument in the house. And playing that new instrument is someone that won't be new to many of us, at least, Laura Belanger, who is our music director back in the day. And Laura's going to play throughout the service, and Sarah and myself and Laura have a little sermon organ talkback thing happening later, which would be good. And then there's a organ recital, beginning around 12, depending on how long we go. It could be till 1. And that will also be live streamed. So those of you who are watching from afar. So anyway, I'm already getting ahead of myself. We're going to say good morning to everybody who's watching from home and watching from afar. Good morning, everybody. There are so many people, you guys, who are with us and who watch from home and where they need to be, whether it's right now or later in the week. I hear from people all the time. It's amazing. Like 30, 40, 50 people every single Sunday, which is terrific. So a few of the gentle reminders, prayer cards, if you want myself to read prayers, right over here. You can't barely see them over on my left. And we because the snow messed our schedule up, there's plenty of slots to bring flowers for our worship space and also to ring the bell and light the chalice. So please do that as you feel moved. Of course, there's an area in the back for young people. And a reminder that our congregation, as uncomfortable as our pews are, is a place where all of us are welcome and all of us need to squirm and make noise. So that's what a community full of many, many ages is all about. So please don't feel guilty about any young people that are, in your pew that are making noise. It's just what we all do, isn't it? That's right. That's right. So today, during most of the service, there's going to be kids' church that Reverend Joe and Ian, who's back from parental leave, by the way, our intern. Ian, for those of you who don't know, he and his family had a new baby, and he's a little sleep deprived, but he looks fresher than I do, which is saying something. So welcome back, Ian. So grades 2 through 6 will be downstairs after the Wonder Box. If you're new, and I know always we have newcomers, there's a blue card in your pews. Please hold those up for those who can see. If you're new and you'd love to be welcomed by us, including Anastasia Krantz, who's our new membership coordinator. I will introduce her in a second again for us. Please fill that out and pass it out to the welcome box as they come by. And of course, join us for service, after service for coffee hour before the recital. There's even going to be cookies and all kinds of things. Get those for the stairs or the elevator. Okay, a couple invitations. You ready? Yeah? The announcements is why we're here, everybody. That's why we're here. So this Tuesday is my next installment of the Creativity for Spiritual Practice class. This Tuesday we're doing sculpture with Michael Fresnelli. And so you don't need to sign up. Just email me, let me know you can come so I can give you the supplies list. And then I have 2 We Are Sanctuary meetings happening this week. One for immigrant support and one for LGBTQ support. If you're not on my list, email me and I'll put you on my list so you can go to that important meetings with me. Next Sunday is my Roots class. about Introduction to Unitarian Universalism. Let me know if you want to do that. Oh my goodness, there's so many things going on. And we'd like Anastasia Krantz, who I just introduced again, is here for, even though she's been with us for a month, she's only been here one Sunday because it keeps snowing. So do you want to say good morning?
Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Anastasia again. I use she, her pronouns. I'm so happy to be with you all today, and every Sunday I felt super welcomed by this community already. If we've already met, please forgive me and introduce yourself again, just so I can put some faces to names and to emails as well.
Wear your name tags.
And wear your name tags, please. And if you're new, we can be new together. Please introduce yourself to me as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Anastasia. All right, everybody, let's greet one another and say good morning, because good mornings are so important.
Good morning. My name is Hannah Zare, and I'm a worship associate here, and I'm going to be reading the opening words. My life goes on in endless song, above earth's lamentations. I hear the wheel of far-off hymn that hails to new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear its music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? Thank you.
Our opening words set us up well for our opening hymn, For the Beauty of the Earth. Please rise and bow to your spirit. The lyrics will be on our screens for us, also in our gray hymnals, number 21. There it is.
Please remain standing for our chalice lighting. My name is Ian Evans. My pronouns are he, him. I am your ministerial intern, finally back. Good to see you all. Our chalice lighting today will be by Kaya Kantrowitz. Thank you, Kaya. The chalice is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, that symbol of the flame burning within us all, that flame of life, that flame of hope. Please join us now in saying our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another.
Skies, make songs of hope and faith.
be seated.
Is it going there? No, we gotta try it again. This little light of ours, we're gonna let it shine. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Joe. I'm one of your ministers, the Minister for Lifespan Learning. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm gonna invite forward any young folks who are here who would like to get up close for our time of opening our Wonder Box. For those who are new to that concept, a Wonder Box has something in it each week that's a surprise that helps us think more deeply about the theme of the service or a holiday or a special something. So I'm pretty excited about what's in there today. Oh, and I even see a hand before I've even asked. Would you like to open it? Or do you have a question? You'd like to open it? Great. All right, if you can open it and hold it up real high. You got the clasp there? Can we lift that up? Mm-hmm. Can you open that and hold it up? Great, can you hold that up real high? Anybody, any of the kids have a guess as what that is? Okay, Rosie. A whistle? You are super duper close. Any other thoughts? Yes. A pipe from, what would it be from, do we think? Yes. From an organ. Awesome. Can I have it? Thank you. Thank you so much. So this is, in fact, a pipe from our actual old pipe organ that used to be up there. And what's cool about it, this one is made from wood, and it goes, I'm not very good at it because I'm not a flutist, but can you hear a noise? Like it is a whistle, basically. Some of them are shaped differently. There's some made out of metal. And I just think I didn't grow up in a tradition that had an organ in the sanctuary and as part of our service. So I really enjoyed getting to learn about the instrument and how cool it is to play it and some of the history. Those of you who are staying in the service will hear a lot more, but I wanted to give us a chance just to learn what this instrument is and why it's so cool. So yeah, what we used to have up there is an organ with a bunch of actual physical pipes. And now actually, if I could have somebody come up here, there is a bag back up here. Come on up, Marina, if you wouldn't mind. There is a cloth bag behind the pulpit. Well, yeah, you can fit. Great. If you can pass around, we have some extra pipes from the organ to feel and look at. Yeah, maybe go around that side just so that there's not fire with the pipes. Great, some of them are wood. So you can see they're made of some different materials. Yeah, so folks up front can pass those around. You can hold them up so folks in the back can see. That's a big one. They see they come in all different sizes, and that's not even a big one. Some of them are real big. So you can pass those around to the kids up front so they can feel them if you want. The first time I got up close and personal with an organ was at Arlington Street Church, where I'm a member, and they have a pipe organ with 3,600 of these kind of pipes. And when I got to go up in the bell tower, they let me into the little room where a lot of the pipes live. And you could kind of crawl in there and you feel like a giant. So if somebody could, oh yeah, there you go. You can see that's what the inside of pipe organs might look like. They're different styles, but you can see some itty bitty ones that go neat and some big ones that go brrr. It's so cool, except that you have to be really careful when you're up near the pipes. I said Arlington Street has 3,600. I bumped one, and so now it's kind of like 3,599. So there's one note that might sound weird, but you probably won't notice. So what's cool about organs is they can make so many different sounds, especially the more contemporary ones, because, oh, there we go, we're gonna hear more of that in just a second. Because they're made out of these different materials and different sizes, and the organ player can select what size or what sounds they want by pulling something called a stop. If we can go to the next slide here. Oops. Well, yeah, that's great, perfect. So, how does the air get through? Does anybody have a guess about how air might get into those pipes to make a noise? Yeah. Vibration through something in particular. If you were to, yeah, do you see what Rosie is blowing into a pipe right now? Oh, we heard a toot. There we go. It's like if you have an empty soda bottle and you go hoot. So it needs air to make that vibration. So traditional ones would have giant bellows. Sometimes you needed as many as 10 or 20 people to push them because the organs were so big. But I'm gonna have us pause in our hooting because we're gonna get a chance to see our new organ. Now, do you see what isn't attached to our organ? Pipes. Yeah, so this is an electric organ where they've taken a lot of the sounds that the organs can make, kind of programmed them in there, and our organist can choose that. So I'm gonna have you guys go on up close for those who would like. Give Laura a little space, but you can go on up close to the organ. Maybe have a seat so that others around you can see. And there's another slide, there we go, for those online and those in the back of the room who can't see. This is our actual organ, and we're gonna do a little moment of question and answer. So We want to make sure everybody who's small, who wants to see, can see. All right. Does anybody have a question for Laura about this, about what you're seeing, about how it works? Can you say and I'll repeat the question into the mic, and then maybe I'll pass the mic to Laura. Rosie, can you pass this microphone to Laura, please, so that she can answer? Laura, would you mind giving an answer to the mic and tell us what the question was?
So somebody just asked about how I memorize all of the stops that are on here. Some of them, well, they have names on them, so I can pull them by hand, like that, see? Or if I have to use a lot of them at once, it is hard to remember. So what we can do is we can put them on these little programmable, what we call pistons. So you see what happens? So they move according to how I program them. So I don't really have to memorize it. All right? Anybody else? What are they for? What are the pedals for? That's the ones on down here. But these down here are, yeah, just like they do. If you look at it closely, you'll see that this is just a big version of this right here. Can you see it? See the two keys and the two black keys, the three black keys? So that's the same thing down here, but you play them with your feet, and they are the low tones of the organ. Yeah. Right? So those are the low tones. You can, yeah.
Laura, why are there so many keyboards up there?
Well, that's a product of history, why there were so many, what we call manuals. They're called manuals on the organ. And in the beginning, there was only one, just like there would be a piano, but they wanted more sounds in different locations. You saw those pictures of the pipes before? Well, they take up so much room that you have to have them in different sections. So that's what they did. So each manual plays stops from a certain section of the organ. It's kind of like an orchestra, but they're in all different places. All right? Yeah. Right. Takes up they can almost take up as much room as an orchestra. Some of them take up more room than an orchestra. Yeah. Yes.
These three sets of keys, does one of them make a higher pitch and like the bottom one makes a lower pitch?
Not necessarily higher or lower, but just different, like different parts of the orchestra. So if you look at these right here, see those? There's a line right there. These right here go with this. These go with this. These go with this, and those on the end go to the pedals.
So we're just hearing that folks in the back can't really hear what's going on, so I'm going to try and help with that a little bit. Yeah, Laura, what's special about this being an electric organ? Well, it's different from pipes. Is there anything cool about it?
One of the nice things about the electronic organs is that you don't have to tune them, where pipe organs, you have to do a lot of tuning. If you have an organ with 3,000 pipes, that means you have to tune every single one of those. Also, the newer organs have sounds that are not necessarily on a typical pipe organ, but they're kind of special, what we call contemporary sounds. You're going to hear some of them today. As a matter of fact, when you go out, you're going to get to hear some on Go Now in Peace, you know, that song that you go out on, right? So I'm going to play some of those special sounds then.
All right, one last question, if there is one. Yes, Rosie. Yeah, so there's some pedals.
The ones
the
down
metal
here?
ones.
Or the big ones? My gas pedals, you mean, or?
So there's the metal ones, and then
These
there's wooden ones.
Those are just like the ones up here, except that there are sometimes when my hands are so busy that I can't do it, so I use my feet.
Amazing.
That makes the organ louder and softer.
Nice. So we're gonna thank Laura. We're gonna thank Laura for sharing so much about the organ and for sharing her music. The reason that it's so cool that we have this, you know, most weeks We get a lot of different kinds of music here. We get piano, guitar, violin, all sorts of cool stuff. It's been a while since we had the sound of an organ in our sanctuary, and that's a part of our UU history, that they were a part of our sanctuary. So it's very, very cool that we get to have one. And I just want you to know, like, this is part of your space. This, as much as you're at home in the sanctuary, be at home around the organ. We're not going to touch it without permission, but it's really cool to get to learn about and appreciate. So thank you, Laura. Kiddos, we are going to head off to our classes. So kids in kindergarten and first grade will go to their first OWL class, and kids grades 2 through 6 will go downstairs with me and Ian for Kids Church. Thank you. Let's sing us out.
Friends, in addition today to having our new instrument, it is also our time of the year in our community of faith that we share our stewardship for one another of this and for this space. And one of the ways that looks like is that we commit to the ways in which we're able to financially support this community that supports all of us over the next year. And one of the best parts about this is that we get to invite folks among you to share what this church means to you. And so this morning we have Karen Barton, who is one of the chairs of the stewardship committee. She'll be downstairs with cookies. You can pick up your pledge card and save money on postage stamps, so do that. And I asked Karen to reflect on how our community has been a sanctuary for her. And here's her answer.
Good morning. So my name is Karen Barton, and I'm co-chair of the Stewardship Committee. So it may seem self-evident that the church is a priority in my life and that I'm willing to give resources of both time and treasure to support it. But as Nathan said, he asked me to say a few words specifically about sanctuary that the church has given me. I've been coming to this church since about 2007, and I first arrived with my husband and 4 children looking for a community. But I wouldn't say that I really needed sanctuary until many years later. I'd like to consider not just the sanctuary of place, although I certainly benefited from a peaceful and quiet hour in a pew, but as something provided to me by another person. That sanctuary is something that we can and do give to one another, and that we sometimes deliver without even knowing that we have. I experienced this when about 10 years ago, I began to walk into church alone, awash in shame over an unraveling marriage, under the cloud of disapproval of my own family of origin, and amid a deeply challenging parenting situation. I had, at this time, multiple children facing a range of things, from a physical situation that required invasive major surgery, a mood disorder so profound that it required police intervention and hospitalization, and 2 children with learning challenges that made school a daily battleground. My ex-husband had moved out of state, and my oldest child, who I only realized after the fact was our calming force, had left for college. I was ashamed, stressed, profoundly doubtful of my own parenting, and wondering how I had gotten into this place in my life. So I came to church with my doubt, my shame, and uncertainty to sit in the same pew in which I had sat for years with my previously intact family, not knowing how the change would be received. I took my place next to an older man who we had been sitting next to for years. His wife sang in the choir, so he usually sat alone, and he was unabashedly happy to see me. Jens Torberg welcomed me with apparent joy each time I entered the pew. He would write me sweet notes from time to time, particularly if I was absent from church. And in that year and the one that followed, he delivered several small messages of hope and belief in the future that fortified my faith that carrying on and finding joy in life was still possible. I once told a friend he was like my church dad. During this period, I had also downsized to a rented house that was, by a stroke of luck, down the block from our friends John and Jane Detweiler. I joined the covenant group that met at their house, pleased to be able to join an adult community where I could safely leave my 11-year-old home alone in the evening, just 6 houses away. Now I have been a part of this group for over 10 years, and what we do on the face of it sounds pretty simple. We meet once a month for a couple hours, check in, and discuss the worship theme. But in reality, we have borne witness to each other's lives. There have been marriages, divorces, grandchildren born, and children have died. We have grappled together with illness and aging parents. We hear each other and hold each other's lives sacred. These moments of sanctuary in the Detweilers' living room have been invaluable. It is not hyperbole to say that these relationships have protected and healed me. Friends, walking together is one of the most powerful things we can do for each other, and you don't necessarily even know when you're doing it. This is what I know when I hear Nathan tell us that we show up not just for ourselves, but for the person next to us. This physical space is our sanctuary, but our true sanctuary lies in what we provide one another. Thank you.
Oh, it makes me miss Jens. Yeah, and Mary. Friends, it's been another chaotic week in our country and our world. Let us just take a breath, would we? Let us be invited here into a moment of stillness and peace, so needed here in this time every week that we make for loving prayers and meditations. Our prayer hymn this morning is Ubi Caritas. Our words will be on our screens for us. I invite us to listen or raise our voices. Friends, these are our prayers that we walk across our threshold with. We begin with our loved ones. This first for two of our beloveds who are currently in hospice. And one of the most privileged things that you invite me to do as your minister is to be with people on the threshold at the end of their life. This week on Thursday, I sat with Barbie Breer, a long time member of our community, sang in the choir. Laura, you remember Barbie so well, and I believe Barbie is watching his big screen I saw right on her den on Thursday, watching with us this morning. Barbie, our love and our heart is with you today. And also, of course, our beloved Gail Donaldson, who is in hospice at home with brain cancer. We also invite a prayer for Catherine, who needs thoughts, prayers, and laughter. Oh, friends, never underestimate the power of laughter. This from Emily, from my sister Paige, who is struggling with hard choices. And this from Gail, Mary's father, Joe, who's in hospice, expected to pass early next week, with love. And from Reverend Joe, for Maya, who's like a little sister to me, whose cancer has worsened, praying for relief and resilience. Friends, let's light a candle for all these beloveds. Let's invite us to say the names of people we're holding this morning. We look out our windows into a day that's finally above freezing, into a world that needs so much of our attention. That's what prayer is, by the way. It is an expression of attention. This from Marianne, for those impacted by a climate of fear and intimidation, especially the family of Jocelyn, who's 11 years old, who took her own life after being bullied, about her family's mixed immigration status. That's heartbreaking, Marianne. Also for those federal civil service folks who are holding strong under painful conditions, I include here my own son, Emerson. And for all those who are mourning the deaths of the children held hostage by Hamas, and for all those people in Gaza. Hannah, let's light a really big candle for all of that stuff. It's a big flame, even though you can barely see it. And last but not least, who's got a gratitude that hasn't been acknowledged this week in your life? I know I do. One of our long ago interns, Stephanie May, who's with us this morning, who's not preaching and teaching and leading over at all the way down in First Church in Boston. Stephanie was our intern many years ago. Stephanie, you give gratitude for the teaching ministry of this congregation and all of its many interns. Amen to you. And for all the gratitudes that we have not given voice to, we light a candle. Thanks, Hannah. Please pray with me, whatever way or shape or form you pray in these moments. Dear love beyond naming and spirit beyond describing, we rest here on this morning of celebration to have all of our beloveds back in community after 2 weeks of snow. We're grateful for a place like this where we can find sanctuary from shame. We're grateful for the church parents who show up in the pews next to us. People like Jens who danced and sent emails to Karin when she wasn't here saying, "How are you? I missed you today." We invite here in this moment of time in February of 2025 to consider and to remember and to take stock of all of the people in our community who are vulnerable now, who feel scared, and who need sanctuary in so many ways. This church is home. Let us be held together in stillness.
Each week, we collect an offering and give it all away to support an organization that lives out our values of love, service, justice, and peace. We're able to give away 100% of our offering thanks to your pledges to our church, which keep us going. This week, we'll be collecting an offering for Hamilton-Garrett Center for Music and Arts. Rooted in Roxbury, Massachusetts, Hamilton-Garrett Music and Arts is committed to the development of Boston's next generation of innovative artists through the celebration and preservation of Black music. They provide high-caliber formal music instruction to youth throughout Greater Boston, preparing them for a future in music and challenging inner-city youth to see themselves as positive producers of culture, music, and the arts as a whole, rather than merely consumers of it. By supporting Hamilton-Garrett, we're helping ensure that Black music in Boston is passed on with care, respect, and a sense of empowerment for those whose legacy it is. You can make an offering by scanning the QR code on the screen or in your pews, or if you prefer to give cash, our greeters will be coming around with baskets. We invite you to give generously. Thanks.
You can feel it in your chest, can't you? Yeah. Friends, here's our world. Beautiful and terrible things will always happen. Our work is to keep our hearts tender and our eyes soft and our words true. This is what you and I strive to be about. We know there's no answer but to love each other. We bear witness against destruction. And we gather here in community to practice being the people we say we want to be. We cannot do everything, can we? But we can do something, and that something is not nothing. So as Leonard Cohen continues to remind us, even when we wonder, let us ring the bells that still can ring and forget our perfect offerings. There is a crack in everything. And say with me, that is how the light gets in. I told us a couple weeks ago that I had a new definition, a working definition of hope. Of hope. How what hope is optimism with a broken heart. Optimism with a broken heart. Yeah. Nick Cave, a rock musician. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. That was his name. Yeah. So it's good to come together again. I had a little PTSD from 2 weeks of Zoom church, the longest years of my ministry. Longest years of my ministry with you. Except for Karin and Jeff's wedding, the only thing I did in person for 2 years were funerals. Yeah. So it's good to be together. You sing my hymn and I sing yours. All of us staggered our breathing, don't we? We take turns. That's what that means. When one of us is exhausted, others of us take the lead. When another of us is anxious, someone else helps us soothe. It's kind of what Jens did for you, isn't it? In this way, you can say that all of us here are an instrument for each other, or instrumental for each other. So as I mentioned during the prayer, I've needed some staggered breath this week, my family and I. I went to see our son last weekend in Washington, D.C., where he's been the last 1.7 years, probationary. And he got off work early on Friday and he said, I don't know, Dad, it's going to happen. Parenting your child when they're 24 it's interesting. You want to fix things for them like you did when they were little and you put a Band-Aid on their knee and you comfort them with, I don't know, cookies or whatever TV show, SpongeBob, God help me, with Emerson. It's harder to do when they're older. We told them we loved him, and no matter what happens, the most important things in your life, your family, your resilience, your skills, your gifts will not change. Yes? And this, he's just one among tens of thousands of people who are worried. And it sounded a little bit like this, Laura. Right? Listen, M is one of the lucky ones. He's got a family who loves him. He doesn't have a mortgage. He doesn't have debt. He's got savings. He doesn't have a bunch of little kids like a lot of his colleagues do. He's not the primary wage earner for a family of 4. Others do not have such things. It is so important in these times to take ourselves out of our own awareness, out of the center of our awareness, and ask how all the things happening in the country right now are affecting other people, even if they're not affecting you. I get the impulse, believe me, to hunker down, to completely tune out the news, to only focus on your life. But I also want you to consider that practice is a privilege. And when we have privilege and moments of fear, we are invited to step forward on behalf of other people. Yes? I like to think of this as the price of compassion. In religious community, compassion is one of our most important pledges, to bring in a stewardship word. It's our currency. And I'm thinking that one thing this moment is asking of us is not to be savers of compassion, I want us to spend our compassion like we're in Vegas. And I want you to consider what compassion looks like in your life. What that looks like in your life. I want us to use an organ reference to pull out all the stops. I want our compassion to have all the bells and whistles. So Sarah, Laura, and I have been total nerds about all things organ. Sarah, you know I love etymology. What is the etymology of organ?
Well, the word organ came from a Greek word originally that meant an implement or tool for making or doing. Literally that with which one works.
We are organs for the moment, Sarah, are we not, each of us?
Yes.
I'm already like way off script, by the way.
So off script. So far.
So, as you heard Joe describe, even though our organ has like an app and you can turn it on and play it without actually a person even, we're not going to do that too much because we have beautiful musicians who play it. But Sarah, these are really old, right? Tell us.
Yes. Organs have a very long history. You may be surprised to know they date back to 300 BCE. Right. I'm glad you made that noise. I felt that way. Pipe organs, Joe was telling us a lot about this. They're wind instruments. The sound happens when air moves through pipes, originally. And the keyboard then would select which pipes the air is moving through. And the original versions back in ancient Greece and Rome were called hydraulis because they used water pressure to move the air. And then after 1,000 years or so of evolution of the organ, by 700 CE, it was no longer water, but the bellows. And Joe had a picture of that up really quickly, but a big organ would have a huge amount of bellows to just constantly push the air, because an organ had a constant sound, unlike the piano when you hit a key and it dies. The organ used air constantly to have a constant air sound. And then as it evolved further, it would have, as Laura was saying, not just one set of pipes for an organ sound, but you'd have a full set of pitches in all these different ranks. That's what a set of pipes was called. And each would have its own timbre or volume or materials it was made out of or the specific sound. And then the stops, as Nathan was just referring to, would be used to block off some of those ranks. But if you pulled out all the stops, you could play them all at one time. So that is what pulling out all the stops means. But one of the weird things about this whole story of the organ is in early Christianity, the rules said there was not to be any instrumental music in the liturgy. But organs kind of snuck in anyway.
So Sarah just said organs snuck in. Did this organ sneak in? This took like the last, feels like 20 years, but it was a year. It took a giant machine. It took a whole crew to sound tune it. It took a bunch of guys on a giant ladder to put those speakers in. In other words, it also took like a whole heap of insurance money.
Yeah, well, things do change. And that changed for the organ, too. There was a new rule by the 1300s. The organ was the only instrument you could have in a church. But spoiler alert, that one didn't stick either. And a couple hundred years later, it was woven very tightly into the culture and liturgy of Catholic Church. And then we had a Reformation, right? So things got even more complicated. Some Protestant churches were still in favor of the organ, and some were very much not, hugely vilifying it, destroying old instruments as they broke away from the Catholic Church. And it's also complicated was Judaism's connection to the organ, which not a lot of us think about, I think. In the 1800s, especially in Germany, Jewish worship, and also in Reform congregations here in the US. The organ was pretty popular, but the Nazis in the 30s and 40s destroyed or stole most organs out of synagogues and Jewish congregations. And still, you can still hear it in Reform congregations here in the US today, but the association with Christianity is so strong, it's still controversial there too. So yeah, this is a complicated culture that this instrument has. And also, technically, it is a complicated instrument. By like the 1700s, it was actually the most complicated human-made machine that we had at the time. And that was only replaced by the telephone once we got that.
You know what else is complicated? My relationship with the organ. And that's because I grew up in a Catholic tradition. An altar boy, 6:45 a.m. Mass, like the whole routine. And I mostly adored my tradition of my upbringing, but it also came with a heavy vibe of guilt. It was reinforced by compulsory confessions once a month and depictions of God as an overlord, or in more current terms, an oligarch, who watched over me for every and any mistake, maybe in current terms, had asked me to email them, proving what I did last week. And the soundtrack to that whole feeling was delivered by what? The organ. Laura, what did it sound like, that guilt vibe? Oh, man. Yep. I'm sorry, everybody. But sometimes our experience is not the only experience, is it? Meaning we have more than one experience in our life. The organ had a heavy vibe for me. The country feels especially heavy and chaotic right now. But it also, today's going to be above freezing, and it's beautiful out. And the world is still beautiful. And I was thinking about that. About how the organ, I was thinking this week, and I was saying to Sarah, like, yeah, it had like that association to some of my not great church experiences, but it also was one of the first things that I heard when my dad took me to a St. Louis Cardinals game. A soothing soundtrack to balance my dad and mine's complicated relationship. It sounded like this. And then years later, in a church in the middle of England, I was 27 years old. I was excited, I was scared, I was young, and my almost about-to-be wife, Karen, stood at the end of a long aisle when this played. And then when my dad died in 2018, my dad loved music. He had this big wooden cabinet with all the albums, like the actual real albums in there, all the music from the 60s and 70s. And I listened to the soundtrack of his era. You know, music, by the way, is the oil on the hinges of your heart. That's how I like to think of it. The oil on the hinges of your heart. I was thinking about the organ, and I remembered how he loved the Doors. Light My Fire. And so this last week, all of these memories got connected for me. And I heard through the memory of time all the soundtracks of my life, and then I saw a bunch of us like super excited this week, Lisa and Tim and Susan, and they were all like, just running around, like just bouncing with excitement. And it was so good to see people bounce with excitement. Yeah, it was so good to see that. And then I sent emails this week to a bunch of us. We have like 65 people on these two groups for immigrant support and LGBTQ support, the We Are Sanctuary group. And then I sent an email this week asking for help with our signs we're going to put out up front. They're going to say something like, "Everyone belongs here." And then I planned this book discussion I'm going to kick off in March about Heather Cox Richardson's new book called Democracy Awakening. And I'm watching everybody, all of you, sort of meet the moment with me, watching the excitement and thinking about my complicated relationship with this instrument, but then realizing that we're instruments for this moment, aren't we? We're instrumental for this moment. And I was thinking about this instrument that has like all of these bellows. One of the original ones took 70 people to operate. 2 players and 70 people to do all the bellows. And I was like, you know me if you know me, I never miss a chance to explain a metaphor. I just want us to know, whatever you might think about this particular instrument and your vibe, know that someone else next to you loves the hell out of it. And what being a community means is that we listen and love up someone else's hymn because they do the same for us. They show up for us after a very hard time in life. They encourage us in the receiving line when you know your minister is wrestling with worry over one of his babies. Staggered breathing in these instrumental times, everybody. Staggered breathing. Amen? So I know it's 11:45, but we have this new instrument, maybe you heard us talk a lot about today, and we want to make a special dedication of it and for it. And so, Sarah, you're going to tell us how we're going to do that and who it's going to be for and to.
So as so many of you know, our guest organist today, Laura Belanger, served as music director here at UUAC for 7 years. While she was here, she composed many beautiful choral pieces that we still perform regularly today. She introduced Music Sundays to our worship, and she became a beloved member of our church community. When we began our search to replace our lightning-struck organ about a year ago, we reached out to Laura to see if she could offer any advice, none of us being organ experts. Laura was extremely generous with her time and her expertise, traveling here from her home in New Hampshire multiple times to educate, inform, and guide us all, through all the while refusing any fee for her consulting. Her help saved us countless hours of research and aimless wandering, really, let's admit that, yeah. And in gratitude, we dedicate this beautiful new instrument to her. This plaque will go on to.
You can't barely see it, but it says, our congregation dedicates this organ in honor of Laura V. Belanger, Director of Music at UAC, 2005 to 2012, organist, composer, conductor, with gratitude for her years of service and ongoing friendship and support. February 23rd, 2025.
Thank you. So come back around noon and hear even more.
Yes, we're gonna do an abbreviated version of this final hymn because we are crunched for time. We're gonna do 2 verses and this is one hymn that Laura asked that we sing together. Number 36, When in Our Music God is Glorified, verses 1 and 2. Invite us to rise in body or spirit. Let us say together our call to ministry, friends. We go forth into the world in peace to act with works of love, to affirm each person's dignity, and to cherish. Invite us downstairs for coffee hour, for a beverage or so, and then you can come up and hear Laura play some more in about 15, 20 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Love to you all.